Here we go. Let's do this.
We've got one life, one shot. Who do you want to be? What do you want to do? Addicted to Betterment, a podcast to inspire us to keep going, to try something new, to dream, to think big, bigger, to overcome. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go.
So we all have those friends, if we're lucky in life. You have those few friends that you share the journey with. And at Addicted to Betterment, that's what we always say is we're passionate about sharing this journey of life, the obstacles, the struggles, and the journey of betterment along with that. And you have that handful of friends that you've been on that journey for an extended period of time. And if you go on any journey, there's twists, there's turns, there's hills, there's valleys. And if you're really lucky in life, you have a handful of people that you get to experience a lot of those with. And today, a longtime friend had a close-up view to just awesome successes, big failures, and everything in between. Genuine of a human as I know. So my friend Nathan Walsh, owner and therapist of Ascend Counseling, and my own personal therapist, I might add, got me through a lot of challenges. He didn't know he was my therapist. But Nathan, it's interesting. Before we get into here, I just want to share with all of our friends who you are. And Nathan, I noticed, first of all, you got a master's degree in mental health counseling. You have a bachelor's degree in psychology, both from Indiana University. Good job. Go right. Hoosiers. If you're not a Hoosier fan.
Go Hoosiers. Who?
Yeah. If you're not a Hoosier fan, you can go ahead. Feel free to turn this off. No, joking. Please keep listening. You're a licensed mental health counselor in the state of Indiana. I noticed, Nathan, that you work with individuals, couples, and families experiencing anxiety, depression, substance abuse disorder, eating disorders, PTSD, ADHD, bipolar disorder, and challenges with interpersonal relationships and finances. Nathan, thank you so much for joining us today, man. It's just an honor and a pleasure beyond words to have you. And I'm excited to share your wealth of knowledge and your heart for impact with our listeners. So, Nate, welcome to the show, man.
Man, I appreciate the invitation, Dave. Thank you. We've shared a lot of experiences together and a lot of life together, and we've butted heads and we've hugged and we've cried, and but through it all, we've stuck with each other, and I think it's been as powerful of a relationship for me as it has for you. And you're as real as it comes, also. And I appreciate that about you. So thank you very much for the invitation.
Thanks, Nate. One of my favorite things about you is you just are real. And you don't posture, you don't act like you have it all together. And as I was preparing to have this conversation with you today, I thought that is the reason you're so impactful with the people you talk to. So, man, a note to myself as I was preparing for this, often we feel like we have to put the posture up, make sure that people don't realize that we're a shit show in some areas. And we are, but where we really make impact and where we really connect with people is in that admission of, hey, I'm human just like you. When we don't pretend like we have all of this greatness. So, Nate, man, I'm dying to know first before we get started. Help me understand with all of our friends what makes you so passionate about this, and give me the why behind it.
And there are a couple of different whys, right? But number one, I'm passionate about this because we don't talk about a lot of these things, right? And we suffer in silence. And suffering in silence and creating that isolation and feeling like nobody gets it and nobody understands. It's such a dangerous place for us to be, just stuck in our heads all the time. And so the more that we talk about these things and the more that we kind of normalize that experience for people, that's where we gain strength and that's where we gain hope. And without hope and without people that surrounded me in my most desperate times and just gave me that glimmer of, man, it can get better, right? Like you can get through this. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be messy. It's going to be snotty. It's going to be ugly. You're going to lose people in your life. right? But through it all, there were a couple of people that believed in me, right? When I didn't believe in myself, I had other people that believed in me and that saw that potential. And I let them believe in me as long as they could until I started believing in myself. And if I can offer that to somebody else, if I can offer that hope, if I can offer that understanding or empathy or compassion to somebody in those spots, man, there's no bigger honor in my life than to be able to share those most intimate moments with people and to be there. And so, that's what I do. It's not just a profession, it's who I am as a person now. And I'm blessed enough to get to experience that every day with the people that I work with, that they trust me to share the most intimate details of their lives. I mean, what an honor.
So Nate, man, thank you so much for sharing that. Give me an example of a personal story, if you have one top of mind, where someone believed in you and maybe you didn't believe in yourself when you share that. And I could hear the authenticity in your voice. It comes through as I'm sitting here looking at you. And give me an example of a time where someone believed in you and you didn't have that belief in yourself.
So, my journey to get to this point, it was not a linear journey, right? There were a lot of ups and downs and backwards and forwards throughout my transition. And I still work on that transition daily, right? Like moment by moment. Having said all that, I grew up in a household. I was raised Catholic, and I was raised in an Irish Catholic household. Lots of alcohol, right? From grandparents to my dad. Everything looked good on the outside, right? We had this good image of what a family was. And I'm not saying there weren't good moments in there. Of course there were, right? There are always good moments with family. But I learned at a young age that, everything was revolved around alcohol. And so that was just kind of my normal growing up, until it got to a point where I was in high school where the alcoholism from my father became over the top. We'd have to go out and look for him in fields and see if he was alive or if he was, deceased, and we didn't know. And it'd be hours. And we'd be out at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, walking around trying to find him. It got to a point in my household where it became physical. I remember a couple of occasions getting tackled over tables or having to fight my dad because of things that were happening with him and my mother. And so, I became a very, very angry person. I didn't understand the anger. I just knew I was angry, right? And so that led me down some very unhealthy paths trying to escape. So I started, really at a young age, 13, 14 years old, experimenting with drugs and alcohol kind of as a way to escape all of this stuff. And I want to be fair also, I also did that with sex. I learned to escape through sex, and it gave me a validation from other people that I was okay and that I was accepted. So I started using all of these unhealthy things to try and kind of fill this void that I had of not being enough, right? Having that core belief of not being enough or not being worthy of love. So I'm drinking all the time. I'm smoking weed, going into high school, getting into trouble. I don't know how, but by the grace of God, I ended up graduating high school because my senior year, my parents got divorced and moved, and I lived in this house by myself. Like my senior year in high school, I'm 17 years old, right? So it's just nonstop drinking and smoking and girls and doing whatever. And I thought, man, I'm living the life, but the whole time I'm just trying to fill this void to feel love, right? So I end up, I graduate high school, I take a year off, right? In the process, I'm at a party, and I feel this pinch in my back. We were doing lots of different things. And one of the things was called ozone. It was kind of like a whippet, right? But it was canisters. And I felt this pinch in my back, and I'm like, what in the world? I was also using other substances. So I was on a hallucinogen, and I thought, man, I'm losing it. I can't go to the hospital. So I sit for about 10 hours before I finally go into the hospital. One of my lungs had collapsed, right? So all of that pain, all of that pressure was actually the oxygen leaving my lungs and getting stuck in my chest. And I had somebody rubbing my back throughout the night because it hurt so bad. So I go to the hospital, get out. I think I was in there for a day. 2 days later, I'm back in the hospital. Both of my lungs had collapsed at that point, right? I'm in the hospital. They were called pneumothoraxes on my lungs that burst. I ended up having surgery, and I'm down for like 3 months at 18, 19 years of age, right? And most people would have the mentality like, I need to change. This is not good. Not me, right? I'm like, I survived, right? Like, I am invincible. And so I just hit it harder, and I hit it harder. Eventually, that leads me to getting my first driving under the influence charge. Through all of that stuff, man, I'd never been in trouble. I'd never got caught doing anything. So I get my first DUI, and a lawyer puts it off for a year, right? I'm doing good things. I haven't been in trouble trying to plead my case. I go to court 30 days after court. I haven't even seen my PO yet. I get my second DUI. Now it's a felony, right? And I'm like, oh man, what do I do? So this is my first stint into an IOP, or an intensive outpatient program. And I start learning some stuff, but I'm like, man, I'm 22, 23, whatever. So I keep going. I did try and have a little bit of sobriety in there just because I didn't like where I was at, but it wasn't enough to keep me there because I was not ready to fight for myself at that point, right? In the meantime, I had been married, had 2 children. And so that was in the mix also. Like, I got to do better for them, but I wasn't ready to do better for me. So in 2003, I get my third DUI, right? And I'd already violated probation. So now I got 2 felonies on my record, and they're sending me to prison. And I'm like, this isn't going to be good, So I go to prison. I go to RDC in Plainfield Correctional Facility, and I'm not there for long. They actually put me in a place that was called the Pumpkin Patch because we all wore orange and everybody else wore the regular colors, right? But I'm still in prison in Plainfield, and I'm looking up at these airplanes, and I'm like, these people are living their lives. I'm sitting in here, and they are living their lives. So I do my little bit, I get out, and I am determined, right? Like, I'm going to do this differently. Get out, and my marriage is a wreck, and end up, getting divorced. And I use that as my excuse to get back into that lifestyle, right? I did restaurant management. I had access to a bar, I had the keys, so it was nonstop. And I'm still trying to fill that void, I ended up meeting my current wife in 2004. And we ended up getting married in 2005 during this process. So I'm having these little glimpses of, I want to be different. I want to do things different. I want to be better for these people. But again, it doesn't last because I'm not willing to do the work. I am not willing to do the work. And I don't even know, in all honesty, at that time, like, what's the work that I need to do? So now fast forward to 2009, and God love my wife for putting up with all of my nonsense during that time. But in 2009, honestly, I had a situation where I was unfaithful. I was drinking all the time, and I was unfaithful. And she said, Nate, that's it. I'm leaving. And that was in February of 2009. Well, I'm still drinking and partying. So I'm like, screw you. I don't need you, right? Whole time trying to cover up that hurt. This person, my person, is leaving. And I was in February. I kept going until April, right? And April 17th of 2009, I was that country song, right? I'm in my house. Nobody's there. I got my dog there and my bottle of Jack. And it's about almost midnight, and I take a drink of Jack and I sit on my steps and I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing? And I said, God, I don't know if you're real. I don't know if you're there, right? But if you are, and if you take this from me, I will do whatever I can do for the rest of my life to help other people that are in this situation. And I poured out my bottle of Jack. I'd lost my job at this time also because of my alcoholism and because I was unfaithful with somebody who was at work. So they found out I lost my job, lost everything, right? So I'm unemployed. My wife is gone. I'm by myself. I ask God this question and I pour out the Jack. And then I'm like, now what? Next day I wake up. Now what? So I go to my local church and I say, I'll volunteer. I'll do something. I just want to be around good people, right? Like pour into me. I need this. I did that for several months and then they end up offering me a job as a custodian. Humbling. But I took it. That was one of the best jobs I've ever had in my life. I did it for a year. I was surrounded by amazing people that poured into me. And then they had a conference one day. It was called Desperate Households. And I started setting up and I was doing some of the audio and some other things for them. And I look around, man, and there are hundreds of people down here, right? And I'm like, what is the difference between me and them? And I thought, it's a piece of paper. They did the work. They got the degree to do the things that they want to do. So that was in November. By January, I signed up for classes to get my bachelor's degree. I started in 2010. 2.5 years later, I got my bachelor's degree. And it was a total God thing because that was the same year that they started the Master's in Mental Health Counseling program, was 2012. So I went directly from my bachelor's right into my master's program. Did that for 3 years and ended up graduating from IU with my master's in mental health counseling in 2015. Then I thought I had it all together, right? I got it. It's all different now. I've done all these things. I've been sober for 6 years. Like my life is different. So I go back and I test the waters, and the waters were still bloodied and full of sharks. But I had people that believed in me. And if I back up, one of those people that believed in me, man, was you. You offered me a job. Nobody else did, right? You offered me a job working as a manager of your place. No questions asked. Nothing but, hey, brother, come on, right? And it makes me emotional because that was one of the most powerful moments. And we shared some great experiences through there, but you didn't question me. You didn't judge me. You just accepted me, right? And then there were two other guys, Scott Hunley, who's a counselor and a mentor, and Luke Erb at the church, who just became a great friend of mine and just an all-around good dude, and they poured into me. But 2015, I relapsed, and I got another public intoxication. Thought everything was done. All of the things I had worked for were done. So I got in and I started doing more work, and I started working on myself and understanding what it is and where it comes from. And I started gaining more hope, right? And I started seeing my effect on others and impacting them and changing lives. And so when we talk about authenticity, dude, I don't know another way to be, but that's a long story long, right? Like I had those guys along the way that were there and that treated me with respect and kindness and compassion, and they never gave up on me. And if I can do that for one other human, I have a purpose.
So, man, dude, thank you for sharing that. That's just a lot, and having a front row seat to you, it also gets me emotional. Told one of my friends this morning, if you want to get me emotional, get talking about my friend, Nate. And so, man, this is awesome. So you're really great at what you do. I've experienced that personally when you probably didn't even know it. I remember when my own life was a shit show and we would sit and have conversations, and you would, speak wisdom to me, often not something I wanted to hear. Usually it wasn't something that I wanted to hear. And it was often in the form of a question. multiple times you had asked me a question. I can name a pivotal situation in my life where I sat. I could take you right to the spot where I was sharing, and you asked me a pivotal question. How do you feel about this? Like, you asked me a question, it's the answer yes or no. And I was like, wow. So I share that to say you're really great at what you do. You're great at understanding the person where they are and providing wisdom and help in doing that. So this helps me and everyone else understand a part of the reason why you're great. Hats off to you and thank you for doing the work to be good at what you do and get to this point. So you have people in your life that believed in you. One, when I hear you share those stories, you had to be able to trust them to believe in you, with your shit. Trust them with, hey, here's who I am. And then they, how they handled that over time is a reason why you look back and say, hey, wow, this person, you mentioned Scott, you mentioned Luke, your friends, and their belief in you and their non-judgmental acceptance of you for who you are. Is your life a shit show? Yes. Doesn't mean you're a bad human. It means that you've got some shitty situations going on in your life. And when I hear you share those, and here I am sitting here looking at you today and see the success and see the impact, a pivotal thing, two things. One is that person had to overcome the stigma. You had to overcome the stigma and being willing to say, hey, listen, they may perceive this or that about me, but I'm going to share it anyway. They had to be trustworthy of that. In my own experience, when I introduced you and I mentioned all the things that you do, the situations that you work with, I think of many people who are struggling with those and no one ever knows. You actually use the term suffering in silence. And I've been there, and I have friends that are there right now, and I have friends who have been there. And the reality is probably everyone in my world is dealing with some of those things. And when you said that, it really connected with me, suffering in silence. And I'm wondering, and I'm asking the question, how much of that is because of the stigma of whatever that is?
Yeah. So suffering in silence, it comes in a lot of forms, right? And whether that is from the old school mentality of like what stays or what's said in this house stays in this house. We don't put our problems out there for other people to know, particularly as guys, right? We're taught that we're not allowed to share these things, that we've got this masculinity or this machismo that we have to project of strength to people. And if we admit weakness, people are going to prey upon that. And so there's that stigma for guys. And then the stigma at large, right? When you think about an alcoholic, I think that this has changed some, but people still have that vision of, I'm not there yet, right? Like, I'm not under the bridge yet. I'm not drinking a wine out of a paper bag yet, right? So that stigma of what that is prevents people from getting help. If I say, somebody who is dependent on heroin, right? An image automatically pops into our mind of what that is. We're not thinking that it was a college athlete that got addicted to an opiate, right? Because the coach wanted him to continue to play and to push the limits. And then that scholarship's gone. And now all of a sudden they've got this dependency, but they've got no means. So they turn to something else, right? We don't know the story behind it, but that stigma prevents people from reaching out and saying, I can't do this, right? I can't do that. And that's just kind of surface level stigma, but stigma kills. End of story, full stop, right? Stigma kills. And that's what we're working to change.
The roots behind that you just shared, the understanding of, you just said it better than it could possibly be said any other time. Stigma kills. It kills. And the result of the stigma is the suffering and silence that prevents us from reaching out to help. And listen, Nate, you're a trusted friend, and I'm grateful to have people like you in my life that have seen the front row seat to the shit show. But the reality is most of my life I've spent just in that exact place that you described, afraid of the stigma. I know as we're talking about this, I know how many people are listening to this right now and like me, was in tears or feeling like, oh my gosh, I relate to that. It's, you're afraid of the stigma, and then it drives you deeper into that isolation. You don't know how to reach out for help. And, and I've had situations where I did reach out for help and it came back and bit me in the ass. Yeah, there's so many levels to that. So the stigma often keeps people from reaching out for help. It keeps, as you said, suffering in silence. Discuss how stigma affects access to treatment and support services.
Yeah, it's preventative, right? Like people have this image of what it is like to go to a residential program. There's fear that's associated with it. There are reasons why people can't put themselves first to get in that situation. I also was an adjunct teacher. That was one of my goals after I graduated, was to become an adjunct teacher for Indiana University. And I was blessed enough to be able to do that for a couple of years. And I taught a course called Introduction to Substance Abuse Counseling. And every year at the beginning of the semester, I would tell people, you're going to go to a recovery meeting, right? They have open meetings to go to where anybody can go. They can experience it. They can understand what it's like, right? I had every reason in the book thrown at me why people could not do this, right? Nobody wanted to walk through those doors. Nobody wanted to be seen as that person. Nobody wanted to say, I know somebody in there or somebody saw me. Now, these are college students. Not to say they don't have problems, not to say they don't have challenges or trauma or other things they've been through, right? I don't want to minimize that experience. But now take that and amplify that by somebody who has lost everything, right? They're facing jail time. They're completely broken. I don't like that. Let me challenge that thought. Nobody is broken. We are all hurt. Right. And so they are extremely hurt or traumatized. And the thought of walking through that door is so overwhelming, right? Every single student, and I'm not saying that lightly, every single student that I had afterwards that went and that did it thanked me. I made them do a reflection afterwards, right? And every single one thanked me because they were like, that is not at all what I thought it was. It was so powerful. There was such a community there, right? But that initial stigma prevents people from walking through that door to say, I need help, right? But once you do, and you're willing, that's the key, right? Willingness. What am I willing to do? Changes everything, but that stigma is a huge barrier that keeps people from getting the help that they need.
Nate, wow. I can't imagine what my friends are. If you can't feel the power in this as I can, it's something. So list off forms of addiction that people would, because one thing I don't want is, it's easy for all of us to think what we have is not addiction. Name some of those things that people might not first come to mind.
Yeah. So one of the things, and I know this is a personal thing for me, and you might buck back at me a little bit, and I'm okay with that, right? Because I love that. Is when I'm working with an individual, that's one term that I try and stay away from: addiction. And I try and look at it through the lens of dependence or dependency, right? Because addiction can be very disempowering. I don't feel like I can get over this. This is something I will always have. But if I have a chemical dependency on something, now I can transform that thought, right? I no longer want to be dependent on a substance. I want to gain my independence. I want to gain my freedom, right? And so I know it's a small caveat in there, especially in the line of work that I do. My words matter and they have an impact. And so I try and get it through that lens of dependency. Now, when we talk about dependency, we talk about that euphoric feeling, right? Or that escape that we get through that moment. I can be shopping on Amazon, right? And see this new thing that's the brightest and the latest. And when I buy it, endorphins go up, right? I feel good in that moment. And then as I get it, I lose that feeling. I lose that euphoric sensation and I start coming back down. Now I'm back on Amazon and I want to get something else because I want to feel that again. Sports betting, right? Oh, the excitement of it, the rush of it. I'm way up here. And then I hit one and then I come back down. And now I spend all this time trying to get back up to this level, right? That I can't achieve. I can't attain it, but I keep trying. So gambling, narcotics, obviously, right? Like when I talk to people that are dependent upon opiates, right? Like there's this initial level, right? Like, oh my gosh, it was so euphoric. Then it becomes trying to achieve that point. And then at some point it flips to, I just don't want to feel sick anymore, right? So there's dependence on substances, there's dependency on sex, there's dependency on alcohol, dependency on spending, dependency on social media. It's constantly producing endorphins. Here's the newest, here's the latest. I spent 8 hours on my phone today, right? 8 hours on social media. What if I spent 8 hours a day just drinking nonstop? Would that be considered a dependency? Still trying to hit that high, right? Still trying to get there.
So the list is endless. I mean, it's a long list. Our society is hurting. The image that I had when you described your college students, and I don't want to go through that. I don't want to do that. Why? I don't want to be seen going in. No, every single one of us can relate to that. That connects. So that person who's hearing this and is that going through that dependency on something that they've thought, man, I want to conquer this. I wish I didn't have this dependency on this. Because usually from my experience, those things that you're dependent on, you get that, as you described, that rush, that high. And then once you don't have that, you're beating yourself up and you're going, man, I got to fix this. And then you get the high again. And then it's this constant roller coaster. The person that can relate to that, what is some things that you would say, here's some tips, here's some things I would encourage you to do?
The first thing, is that recognition that saying I need help is one of the strongest things that a person can do. It takes courage, right? It takes hope when you're feeling hopeless, right? Saying, we got that catchphrase, I got this. Who's got this? I've been through this personally. I've been trained professionally. I do this daily, I don't got this. I still need help, and it takes courage. And it is one of the strongest things that somebody can do to say, man, I don't got this. Now I'm open, right? And that's all it starts with, man, is that little bit of willingness, that little bit of hope, and a whole lot of strength to say, I need help. Now, once you do that, whether that's through a community center, whether that's through a church, whether that's through getting an assessment to see where you're at, what level of care that you need, right? There are lots of different places and resources that you can go to get connected. Maybe it's walking through the door of a recovery, a grassroots recovery network like an AA or like a Celebrate Recovery or like a Narcanon, right? Maybe it is something along those lines for you. But maybe that dependency is at a level where you need more help and where you need more support. And that's where we come in, right? Is to get you connected to the right level of support that you need to give you the best opportunity to be successful. And that's all that we can do is create those opportunities for individuals. So it just starts by having the strength to say, man, I don't got this.
Friends, this is Addicted to Betterment. This is what we're here for. Life is a journey. It's easy to pretend like we have it together, and it's easy to pretend like we're at the top. And often we are pretending we're at the top and we feel like we're at the bottom. the message I hope that we all take from this today, number one, is stigma is a killer, and you don't suffer in silence. Don't suffer in silence. Recognize, find someone that can be that safe space. And here's a message I want to add to that is, if you get the opportunity for someone else to borrow your belief in them, be that. I mean, be that. If you have that person that is at the bottom, and you see that they don't have someone who just simply believes in them when they don't believe in themselves, be that. Nate, my friend, brother, you are an impact on me. You elevate my life, and I know the impact that you have on so many. Thank you for being a friend. Thank you for being a brother. Thank you for taking time to share Addicted to Betterment with our friends. I can't wait to have you back.
Absolutely. Can I add one small thing real quick?
Please, yeah.
Hey, the only other thing I want to say, man, is I'm not special, right? It's not because I did this or because this or that. I'm not special. I just was willing to do the work. And I say that as a sense of encouragement to anybody else, right? A willingness to do the work and the belief that things can get better and improve. But hey, man, I'm not special. I'm just me.
So you just listened to this episode. Now, join us in being addicted to betterment. Please subscribe to the show, share with your friends, tag us, and please take a moment, leave a review. Yeah, we do want your stars, but we really want the feedback.